I spent 7 years believing my only role was fixing operational disasters, but the invoice that slid across my desk during the Christmas party rehearsal changed everything. My husband smiled at me like he had just won $1 million. Unaware that his grin was about to die, he saw a simple clerical error. But I saw the trap immediately. He thought I was just the audience. He had no idea I was the one writing the script. My name is Brielle Maddox, and in the polite, manicured suburbs of Raleigh, North Carolina, I have spent 7 years building a life that looks impenetrable from the outside. I drive a sensible luxury sedan. I host dinner parties with the correct wine pairings, and I have been married to Gavin Pierce for nearly a decade. But my real identity isn't defined by my marriage or my address. It is defined by my title at Everpine Systems Group. As the VP of Operations, I am the person they call when the structure is failing. I am the one who finds the leaks, cuts the dead weight, and balances the ledger. Just 24 hours ago, I had been in a boardroom staring down a catering vendor who tried to hold our annual Christmas gala hostage for an extra 15% markup. I didn't scream. I didn't threaten. I simply slid a contract across the table, pointed to a liability clause they had overlooked, and saved the company $40,000 in under 10 minutes. My colleagues think I am merely pragmatic, perhaps a little cold. They see a woman who cares more about spreadsheets than sentiments. They have no idea that this coldness is the only thing keeping me standing. I was still wearing my blazer, smelling of stale office coffee and expensive toner, when Gavin walked through the front door. He looked like the picture of success. He dragged his leather carry-on across the foyer floor, his face flushed with the kind of high that comes from closing a massive deal. He had told me he was in Atlanta for 3 days, finalizing a merger for his firm. Bree. "You won't believe the numbers," Gavin shouted, dropping his keys into the ceramic bowl with a clatter. He loosened his tie, beaming at me. "The bonus from this one is going to change everything. We are talking serious capital. I told you this trip would be worth it." I stood behind the kitchen island, my hands resting flat on the cool quartz countertop. I did not smile. I waited for him to walk all the way into the room, to really see me. Before I made my move, I placed 3 items on the counter between us. First, a cheap black burner phone I had found taped beneath the passenger seat of his car when I moved it earlier. Second, a gray bank envelope marked with a routing number I didn't recognize. And third, a photocopy of a document. It was a loan application, the ink still fresh. "Welcome home." "Gavin," I said, my voice devoid of warmth. Gavin froze. The victorious grin didn't just fade, it died instantly, replaced by a look of sheer, calculating panic. He stared at the items. I saw his eyes dart from the phone to the paper. The document was a request for a home equity line of credit against our house, valued at several $100,000. At the bottom, there was a signature, Brielle Maddox. It was a decent forgery, but the slant was wrong. I pressed harder on the downstrokes. He looked up, and I watched him switch tactics in real time. The panic vanished, replaced by a defensive, wounded sneer. "You went through my car?" Gavin asked, his voice dropping to a low, accusatory rumble. "I come home after busting my ass for this family for 72 hours, and this is what I get. You are digging through my private property like some jealous high school girlfriend. That is not my signature." "Gavin," I said. "You are crazy," he snapped, laughing nervously as he reached for the burner phone. "You are exhausted. Bree." "You have been obsessing over this company party for weeks. You signed those preliminary papers months ago. You are forgetting things again, just like you lost your keys last week. You are paranoid." I watched him pocket the phone. He was trying to rewrite reality. He was banking on the fact that I was overworked, that the gala was tomorrow, and that I wouldn't have the mental bandwidth to fight him. He thought this was just a dispute about money. He didn't realize I had already read the timestamp on the approval. The loan had been pushed through today, using a remote notary, while I was supposedly distracted. I decided not to explode. Explosion is a waste of energy. Instead, I felt a familiar click in my brain. It was the same feeling I got when I found a discrepancy in a supply chain audit. I shifted into operational mode. Maybe, I whispered, letting my shoulders slump. I forced myself to look down, feigning confusion. Maybe the stress is getting to me. I don't remember signing it. Gavin exhaled, the tension leaving his frame. He thought he had won. He walked over and kissed my temple, his touch making my skin crawl. Get some sleep, babe. We can talk about my bonus in the morning. I'm going to shower. As soon as I heard the water running upstairs, the mask dropped. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I pulled out my phone and scanned the document on the counter into a hidden, encrypted folder. I took a photo of the bank envelope. I logged the exact time he arrived and the mileage I had noted on his car. I locked the physical evidence in the small safe disguised as a book in the living room. He thinks I am just the audience to his performance. He has no idea that I am the one writing the operational script. I waited until the rhythm of Gavin's breathing shifted into the heavy, rhythmic snore of deep sleep before I slipped out of bed. The house was silent, but the noise in my head was deafening. I retreated to the walk-in closet, buried myself under a row of winter coats to dampen the sound, and dialed the fraud department of our bank. It was 3 a.m, but the 24-hour platinum line picked up instantly. Mrs. Pierce, I see the transaction you are flagging, the representative said, his voice tinny through the speaker. But our records show a remote notary session was completed yesterday. Video verification was used. My hand tightened around the phone until my knuckles turned white. Video verification, I whispered, my heart hammering against my ribs. Yes, ma'am, you, or the individual identifying as you, presented a driver's license and signed the equity release via a secure link at 10:30 in the morning. 10:30. I closed my eyes. At 10:30 yesterday morning, I was not signing loan documents. I was standing in a glass-walled conference room at Everpine, verbally dismantling a logistics manager who had tried to hide a 4% variance in shipping costs. There were 12 witnesses. There was security footage. There was a digital log of my keycard access. I see, I said, my voice dropping to a register of absolute 0. Freeze it. Freeze everything. If a single penny moves out of that account, I will sue this bank into the ground. I hung up before he could respond. I did not panic. Panic is inefficient. I moved to the next item on my mental checklist. I crept down the hallway to Gavin's home office. He had become sloppy lately, arrogant in his belief that I was too busy balancing corporate budgets to notice the deficit in my own marriage. I didn't tear the room apart. I used the flashlight on my phone, sweeping over his desk. In the back of his top drawer, buried under a stack of old golf scorecards, I found it. A single silver key with a neon yellow plastic tag. Written on the tag in black marker was the number 88. It wasn't a house key. It looked industrial. Storage. A private mailbox. I took a photo of the key, noting the brand, then placed it back exactly as I found it. Next, the garage. The air inside Gavin's luxury SUV was cold, but the smell hit me the moment I opened the driver's side door. It wasn't his cologne. It was a cloying, floral scent, something cheap, something that tried too hard, vanilla and desperate ambition. I reached under the passenger seat, my fingers brushing against the carpet until I felt the cold plastic of the burner phone. He had moved it from his pocket back to the car, thinking it was safer here. I pressed the power button. The screen lit up, demanding a passcode. I stared at the glowing keypad. A smarter man would have used a random generator. A careful man would have used a string of unrelated numbers. I typed in 4 digits 0, 6, 1, 2, June 12th, our wedding anniversary. The phone unlocked. It felt like a physical slap, a crude joke he was playing on me without even knowing it. He used the date of our vows to secure the evidence of his betrayal. I didn't let myself feel the hurt. I just felt the cold clarity of confirmation. I opened the messages. The contact was saved only as KS. The most recent text was from yesterday afternoon. Did she sign? We need to move fast on the closing. Gavin's reply. Done. She is clueless. I'll saddle her with the debt and we will be gone by New Year's. I scrolled up. There were no photos of business meetings in Atlanta. Instead, there was a picture sent 2 days ago. It showed 2 glasses of champagne raised against a sunset. But the background wasn't the Atlanta skyline. I recognized the distinctive boardwalk and the rusted railing. It was Wilmington. He had been 2 hours away at the beach, spending our money, while I was fighting to save his reputation and my company's finances. You bastard! I breathed, the words barely audible. The battery icon on the burner phone turned red, 5% remaining. I didn't have much time. I pulled out my own phone and switched to video mode. I slowly scrolled through the entire text thread, capturing every timestamp, every promise, every insult. Then I saw the calendar entry on the burner phone. Wednesday, 10:30 in the morning. Notary, KS. Stand-in. The breath left my lungs. KS. Wasn't just the other woman. She was the imposter. She had worn a wig, maybe some makeup, and used a fake ID to impersonate me on the video call. They hadn't just cheated. They had committed federal identity theft and bank fraud. I put the burner phone back exactly where it was, angling it slightly to the left, just as I had found it. Back in the safety of the guest bathroom, I locked the door and sat on the edge of the tub. I opened my laptop and began building the firewall. I created a new secret bank account at a different institution. I changed the passwords to my primary email and enabled 2-factor authentication on everything, routing the codes to my work phone, not my personal one. I placed a freeze on my credit with all 3 bureaus. I wanted to scream. I wanted to march into the bedroom, wake him up, and throw the phone at his head. But Gavin was a salesman. If I confronted him now, he would spin a story. He would say it was a misunderstanding, a prank, a surprise. He would destroy the evidence. No. I needed him to feel safe. I needed him to think the plan was working. You want to play a game. Gavin, I whispered to the empty room. Fine. But you forgot one thing. I never lose on technicalities. I closed the laptop. I wouldn't derail his train yet. I was going to grease the tracks and watch him accelerate straight off the cliff. When Gavin returned home the next evening, I was standing on a stepladder in the foyer, a cordless drill in my hand. The high-pitched whine of the drill bit biting into the doorframe made him flinch. He dropped his briefcase, his eyes darting to the sleek, black camera I had just mounted above the entrance. "What on earth are you doing, Bree?" he asked, a nervous laugh escaping his lips. Turning the place into a fortress, I didn't look down. I kept my focus on the screw, tightening it with precise, mechanical turns. "Porch pirates." "Gavin," I said, keeping my voice light and breezy. I read on the neighborhood app that packages are getting stolen left and right this holiday season. I ordered a few expensive gifts for the team. I'm not taking any chances. He loosened his tie, staring at the lens. It was a lie, of course. The only thief I was worried about was standing in my hallway. "Right," he muttered, walking past me. "Just seems a bit excessive. You know how I feel about being watched. Only criminals worry about cameras." "Darling," I replied, climbing down and dusting off my hands. Once he retreated to the shower, I began my inventory. I moved through the house like an insurance adjuster. I took high-resolution photos of the serial number on his espresso machine, the model number of his golf clubs, and the reference number engraved on the back of his luxury watch collection. To him, I was just cleaning. In reality, I was securing the asset list before he could start hiding things. The first crack in my social circle appeared an hour later. My phone buzzed with a call from Samantha Holt, my best friend since college. "Hey, Bree," Sam said, her tone overly cautious. "I just wanted to check on you. Gavin texted Mike and said you were... Well, he said you were having a bit of a meltdown over this party budget. Said you were seeing things that weren't there. My grip on the phone tightened. He was already planting the narrative. He was painting me as the hysterical, overworked wife so that when I eventually exposed him, everyone would think it was just another delusion. I am fine. Sam, I said, keeping my voice steady. Just busy. You know how Gavin likes to exaggerate. Okay. Well, just breathe. Okay. Don't let the stress get to you. I hung up and immediately booked an emergency consultation with Tessa Langford, a forensic accountant and divorce attorney who came highly recommended by my company's legal department. I met her in a coffee shop 3 towns over, wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses. Tessa was sharp, 60, and terrifying. She listened to my timeline, looked at the photos of the burner phone, and nodded. Do not lock him out yet, Tessa advised, sipping her black coffee. If you cut off his access now, he will panic and destroy evidence we haven't found yet. We need him to feel comfortable enough to make a mistake. Put silent alerts on everything. Let him hang himself. I followed her advice. That night, I didn't sleep. I laid next to Gavin, my phone under my pillow, vibrating softly every 20 minutes. First, a notification for a failed login attempt on our joint savings at 2:30 in the morning. 15 minutes later, another alert, a password reset request for the investment portfolio. He was lying right next to me, breathing rhythmically, pretending to be asleep while he frantically tried to access our liquid assets on his phone beneath the sheets. He was testing the fences, seeing what he could move. He was desperate. The next morning, I played my part. I sent him a text while he was at work, a picture of a ceramic reindeer I had placed on the mantel. Thinking of putting this one in the foyer. Too tacky, I needed him to think I was oblivious, consumed by domestic trivialities. It worked. He came home that evening with takeout and a bottle of red wine, his confidence restored. He poured me a glass, sitting too close on the sofa. Bree, he started, putting on his serious, caring face. I have been thinking. This loan, this money I'm moving around, it is for us, for our future. I want to build a cushion so you don't have to work this hard. He reached for my hand, his palm sweating. You should quit Everpine after Christmas, he said softly. Just take a year off. Relax. Let me take care of everything. You look so tired. It was a masterclass in manipulation. He wasn't offering me a break. He was trying to sever my lifeline. If I quit, I would lose my income, my status, and my access to the company's legal resources. He wanted me isolated and dependent right before he left me with the debt. That sounds wonderful. Gavin. I lied, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Let's get through the party tomorrow first. Then we can talk about my retirement. He squeezed my hand, relief washing over his face. Perfect. Tomorrow is going to be a great night. He had no idea. He thought the Christmas party would be his victory lap. The moment he solidified his social standing while his wife faded into the background. He thought I was just the prop on his arm. I looked at the reflection of the Christmas tree lights in the window, cold and glittering. Yes, I whispered. It will be a night to remember. He was confident in his lies, but he forgot that he was bringing a wolf into a room full of sheep, and I was done grazing. I was ready to hunt, and the company Christmas party was going to be my killing floor. Gavin left the house at 6 in the evening, dressed in his compression gear and carrying a gym bag that looked too light to hold any actual equipment. He told me he was hitting a 2-hour session at his club downtown. I waited exactly 4 minutes until his taillights disappeared around the curve of the cul-de-sac before I grabbed my coat and the silver key I had photographed the night before. The storage facility was located in a desolate industrial park on the outskirts of Raleigh, a place where the streetlights flickered and the air smelled of wet asphalt and diesel. I pulled my car into the shadow of a rusted shipping container and walked toward the row of climate-controlled units. I stood before the metal roll-up door marked Unit 88. My heart was beating against my ribs like a trapped bird, not from fear, but from the cold anticipation of what I was about to confirm, I looked at the keypad. Gavin was a creature of habit, a man who believed his past patterns were invisible to others. I didn't need a hacker. I punched in 4 digits: 1, 9, 8, 5, his birth year. The light on the keypad turned green with a cheerful beep. The mechanism clicked, and the door rolled up with a heavy metallic rattle. I expected boxes of old college textbooks or maybe golf clubs. I did not expect an office. The unit was set up like a war room. A sleek, glass desk sat in the center, illuminated by a battery-powered camping lantern that cast long, sharp shadows against the corrugated metal walls. There were shelves lined with designer boxes, watches, leather goods, electronics, all purchased with money that had likely been siphoned from our joint accounts over the last year. But it was the corkboard on the back wall that made my blood run cold. It was titled Exit Plan Holiday Window. I walked closer, my boots clicking softly on the concrete floor. The plan was broken down into weeks. Control narrative, I whispered, reading the index card pinned to the first column. Isolate target from support system. Move funds to offshore shell. He had treated our marriage like a hostile takeover. Under the column for post-party, there was a single word written in red marker: disappearance. I turned to the desk. There was an open notebook lying next to a stack of papers. I flipped through the pages and felt a wave of nausea rise in my throat. It was page after page of my own name. Brielle Maddox. Brielle Maddox. Brielle Maddox. He had been practicing my signature. There were notes in the margins in his handwriting, analyzing the pressure of my pen strokes and the loop of my L. You didn't just lie to me. Gavin, I said to the empty room, my voice shaking with a rage so cold it burned. You studied me. I picked up a file folder labeled Maddox Meridian LLC. Inside, I found incorporation papers for a company registered in my name, using a private mailbox I had never visited. He was building a vessel to hold the debt he planned to dump on me. Beneath that was an invoice from a company called Kestrel Finance Tactics. The billing contact was K.S. K.S. wasn't just a mistress he met at a bar. She was a consultant. This wasn't an affair of passion. It was a transaction. She was billing him for the strategy to destroy me. I pulled out my phone and began documenting everything. I took high-resolution photos of the board, the notebook, the serial numbers on the stolen goods, and the LLC papers. I recorded a slow, panning video of the entire room, ensuring I captured the unit number and the date. Then, my hand brushed against a stack of receipts under a paperweight. I picked them up. They were hotel folios. The Grand Over Resort. I read aloud, my eyes narrowing. Raleigh. The dates matched his business trips to Atlanta, Chicago, and New York. He hadn't been traveling for work. He hadn't even left the state. He had been staying in a luxury resort less than 10 miles from our house, likely with KS, ordering room service and planning my financial ruin while I sat at home worrying about his flight delays. I put the receipts back exactly as I found them. I smoothed the page of the notebook I had touched. I backed out of the room, hitting the button to lower the door. Outside, the winter rain had started to fall, cold and biting. I walked back to my car, the water soaking into my hair, but I didn't feel it. I sat in the driver's seat and locked the doors. I looked at the digital clock on the dashboard. Gavin would be home in 40 minutes, pretending to be exhausted from his workout. Baling wire and duct tape, I murmured, wiping a drop of rain from my cheek. That is all you have. Gavin. And I just found the scissors. I started the engine. I had the evidence. The investigation was over. Now, it was time to set the stage. The whispered narrative had already begun to circulate through our social circle like a slow-acting poison. I didn't need to hear it directly to know what Gavin was saying. I could see it in the pitying glances of the neighbors and the sudden silence when I walked into the local coffee shop. He was painting a portrait of a woman unraveling a wife obsessed with control, paranoid about security cameras, and cracking under the pressure of her job. The confirmation came from Samantha Holt. She stopped by in the afternoon, ostensibly to drop off a holiday card, but her hands were shaking as she held her tea mug. "Bree, I didn't know how to tell you this," Samantha stammered, looking down at the steam rising from her cup. "But last month, at the Millers' dinner party, Gavin asked my husband about the legal requirements for a psychiatric evaluation during a divorce. He said you were hearing things." I felt a cold sensation wash over me, settling deep in my stomach. He hadn't just reacted to my recent behavior, he had been planting these seeds for weeks. "Did he?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. "He said he was worried you might hurt yourself," Samantha whispered. "He's setting you up." Bree. I didn't have time to process the betrayal because my phone pinged with an email notification. It was from an unfamiliar address, but the subject line made my blood freeze. FW Draft Settlement, Pierce v. Maddox, Asset Division. It was a mistake, a forwarded chain that was never meant to reach my inbox. I opened the attachment. It was a blueprint for my destruction. The terms outlined how Gavin would retain full liquidity while I would be saddled with the new mortgage debt, citing my mental incapacity to manage finances. And then, halfway down the second page, I found the sentence that explained everything. "If we can provoke a public outburst at the Everpine Gala, we can file for emergency temporary conservatorship immediately." They didn't just want my money. They wanted to break me in front of the most important people in my industry to justify taking away my freedom. I forwarded the email to Tessa Langford instantly. "File the emergency motion," I told her over the phone. "Freeze the accounts. Flag the fraud. Do it now." "I am on it," Tessa replied. "But Brielle, we got something else." The bank's security algorithm flagged the notary session. The IP address of the notary matches the guest Wi-Fi at the Grandover Resort, the same hotel where Gavin was staying. The loop was closing. The notary wasn't a neutral third party. She was in the room with them. I heard the garage door open. Gavin was home. He walked into the kitchen carrying a massive bouquet of red poinsettias and white roses, wearing a look of practiced contrition. He placed the flowers on the island, right next to where my phone sat. "Bree," he said, his voice dripping with syrup. "I know things have been tense. I hate it when we fight. I want us to get back to where we were. I want to fix this." He reached out to touch my arm. At that exact second, my phone rang. The screen lit up with the bank's fraud department number. Gavin saw the caller ID. His eyes widened, and his hand shot out, covering the screen. "Don't answer that," he ordered, the sweetness vanishing instantly. "It is just spam. I'll handle the finances from now on. You need to rest." I looked at his hand, then up at his eyes. I didn't flinch. I reached past his wrist, picked up the phone, and slid the green icon to answer. "Mrs. Pierce," the agent's voice asked. "We are verifying the location of the notary for the loan dispersal." I held Gavin's gaze. He looked like he was ready to strike me. I was not present. I said into the phone, my voice clear and steady. "I did not sign those papers. The signature is a forgery." I hung up. The silence in the kitchen was heavy, suffocating. Gavin took a step back, his face twisting into a sneer I had never seen before. He laughed, a low, ugly sound. "You think they will believe you?" He scoffed, leaning in close. "You think you can stop this? I have emails. Brielle. Emails from your account, sent from your IP, authorizing everything. You don't remember sending them." That is exactly what I will tell the judge. He had hacked my old account. He had fabricated a digital paper trail to make me look compliant and confused. "You are going to lose everything," he hissed, his face inches from mine. "The house, the job, the reputation. Unless you stop fighting me, just be the good wife, sign the papers, and maybe I will let you keep the car." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't throw the flowers in his face. I simply stood there, staring at him with the blank expression of a woman who had given up. But inside my pocket, my phone was recording every single word. He thought he had cornered a frightened animal. He didn't realize he had just confessed to a federal crime on tape. I turned and walked out of the room, leaving him alone with his flowers and his arrogance. The game was set. The players were in position. And tomorrow night, at the Christmas party, the curtain would finally rise. The ballroom of the Grandover Resort was vibrating with the kind of manic energy that only precedes a corporate gala. Waiters rushed past with trays of crystal stemware, and the scent of fresh pine garlands mixed with the metallic tang of industrial floor polish. As the VP of Operations who had miraculously salvaged the budget for this event less than 48 hours ago, I was the invisible center of gravity. Everyone wanted to shake my hand. Everyone wanted to know how I did it. Gavin knew this too. He was counting on the pressure of the spotlight to be the catalyst. He believed that if he pushed just hard enough, if he whispered the right trigger words in the middle of a crowd, I would snap. He wanted a scream. He wanted tears. He wanted the board of directors to see a hysterical woman crumbling under stress, validating every lie he had planted about my mental stability. I slipped away from the decorators and found a quiet corner in the lobby to meet with Marcus Thorne, the head of Everpine's legal department. He was a man who spoke in clauses and liabilities. Marcus, I need a clarification on company policy regarding personal litigation that might impact executive standing, I said, keeping my voice low. He raised an eyebrow, adjusting his glasses. Is this about the budget negotiations, Brielle? Because you are in the clear. No, I replied, hypothetically. If an executive were aware of an impending fraudulent claim against their character, aimed at leveraging company assets, what is the protocol for preemptive disclosure? Marcus stared at me for a long moment. He didn't ask for details. He knew better. Document everything, Marcus said softly, and ensure that any outburst happens in a controlled environment where the company is not liable, if the executive remains professional while the other party escalates. The company protects its own. Understood, I said. I returned to my temporary office in the hotel suite. I opened my laptop and initiated the final lockdown. I migrated every critical email, every piece of evidence I had gathered, to a secure cloud server with a new encryption key. I requested the hotel security manager to confirm that the cameras in the main foyer and the ballroom entrance were active and recording to the cloud. I framed it as a standard security check for the VIP guests. He agreed without hesitation. Then, my phone buzzed against the mahogany desk. It was a high-priority alert from my secret bank app. Transaction attempted $50. Transfer to account ending in 449. It was a test. Gavin was trying to move a small, insignificant amount from our joint account to a strange external account, just to see if the pipes were still working. He was prepping the channels to drain our assets the moment the party started. A second later, another alert popped up. Transaction failed. Account frozen. I didn't smile. I didn't block him from trying again. I wanted him to see that failure message. I wanted him to stand in his tuxedo, staring at his phone, realizing that his exit route was bricked up. Panic makes people sloppy. Panic makes people loud. I opened my evening clutch. It was a small, silver hard-shell case. Inside, I didn't pack lipstick or a compact mirror. I slid in a folded envelope containing the high-resolution photos of the storage unit, the printed email chain where he discussed my breakdown, and a USB drive containing the video of the burner phone. I ran through the rules in my head one last time. No screaming, no physical contact, no mentioning the word divorce until the papers were served, and absolutely, under no circumstances. Would I let him drag any family friends or their children into this? This was a financial execution, not a domestic brawl. I walked into the dressing room and zipped up my dress. It was emerald green, sharp, and structured, like armor made of silk. I stood before the full-length mirror. I didn't look like a victim. I didn't look like a heartbroken wife. I looked like the person who signed the checks. You want a show. Gavin, I whispered to the reflection, I will give you a performance. I picked up the clutch and snapped it shut. The click sounded exactly like the hammer of a gun pulling back. I was ready. The ballroom was a sea of black ties and sequins, illuminated by crystal chandeliers that cast a fractured, glittering light over the guests. The air hummed with the sound of expensive jazz and the clinking of champagne flutes. I stood near the entrance, my hand wrapped around the stem of a glass I had no intention of drinking, watching Gavin work the room. He was in his element. He laughed at the CEO's jokes, touched the elbows of the board members, and played the role of the supportive husband to perfection. But I saw the cracks. I saw the way his eyes darted to the exits every few minutes. I saw the slight tremor in his hand when he checked his phone. He steered the conversation toward me as soon as the chairman of the board approached us. "Brielle has done a miracle with this budget," Gavin said, his voice smooth and projecting just enough for the surrounding circle to hear. He placed a hand on the small of my back, his grip tightening imperceptibly, though, I admit, I have been worried about the toll it is taking on her. She has been so sensitive lately, overthinking the smallest details. I keep telling her she needs to rest, but you know how obsessive she can get. The chairman looked at me with polite concern. Gavin was planting the seed. He was framing my competence as mania. I didn't pull away. I didn't defend myself. I simply smiled, a razor-sharp expression that didn't reach my eyes. Detail is what saves $500,000 in a single quarter. "Gavin," I said, my tone light but unyielding. I turned to the chairman. It wasn't stress. It was leverage. And we are very happy with the outcome. Gavin's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. He expected me to be flustered. Instead, I was ice. When I took the stage to accept the recognition for the event, I didn't look at Gavin. I didn't thank him for his support. I spoke for 3 minutes about the logistics team, the vendors, and the operational resilience of Everpine. I saw Gavin in the front row, his jaw tight, his applause lagging a second behind everyone else's. He looked small. Then I saw her. She was standing near the bar, wearing a dress that was too loud for a corporate event and holding a badge that read "Consultant." It was the woman from the photo on the burner phone, K.S. She wasn't crashing the party. Someone inside the vendor chain had put her on the list. That meant the fraud went deeper than just my husband. I excused myself and walked toward the ladies' lounge. I knew she would follow. The heavy door clicked shut behind me, muffling the music. I stood at the mirror, washing my hands, watching her reflection as she entered. She looked younger than I expected, but her eyes were terrified. She smelled like the cheap vanilla perfume I had found in my car. "Mrs. Pierce," she said, her voice shaking. "We need to talk." I dried my hands slowly, turning to face her. "I don't believe we have met," I said coldly. "He is going to burn you," she whispered, taking a step closer, her hands clutching a beaded bag. "Gavin, he is telling everyone you are unstable, but you don't know what he is really doing. He is going to leave you with nothing. He promised me we would be safe, but I saw the emails. He is setting me up to take the fall if the bank catches on." I looked at her. She was trying to play the victim, trying to trade information for immunity. I didn't trust her for a second. "The LLC," I said, cutting her off, "Maddox Meridian. Whose name is on the Articles of Incorporation? K.S. Froze." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She realized in that moment that I wasn't the clueless wife she had impersonated on the video call. I knew the name of the shell company. You know," she stammered. "I know everything. I lied. So, tell me something I can use, or I walk out that door and let the security team know you are soliciting guests." She swallowed hard, tears welling in her eyes. "There is a USB drive." She rushed out, the words tumbling over each other. "He keeps the originals on it, the scanned signatures, the notary video, the engagement letter with the finance firm. He has it on him. He is going to hand it off to his contact later tonight for safekeeping because he is scared you are watching the house. Where I asked? The valet stand, she said. He put it in the glove box of your car when we arrived. He is going to give the valet the ticket later to retrieve it. I stared at her. It was a bold move, hiding the evidence of his crime in the vehicle of the woman he was robbing. Get out of my sight, I said. She didn't argue. She turned and fled the bathroom. I waited until the door settled before I allowed myself to exhale. I didn't know if she was telling the whole truth, but the crack in their alliance was real. They were turning on each other. I walked back out into the corridor. My phone vibrated against my hip. I pulled it out and saw a notification from the bank monitoring service. Urgent final verification, pending for home equity release. Funds scheduled for transfer at midnight. I looked at my watch. It was 10 o'clock. I had 2 hours before the system automatically cleared the funds, and Gavin won. He thought he was about to cash out. He didn't know I was holding the match that would burn his entire future to the ground. There is a secret I have kept buried for 7 years, a truth that even Gavin does not know. He believes I am Brielle Maddox, the hard-working scholarship girl who climbed the corporate ladder through grit and sleepless nights. He is wrong. My mother's maiden name is Sterling. My grandfather founded the parent conglomerate that owns Everpine Systems. I am not just a vice president. I am the silent majority shareholder. I hid my identity because I wanted to know if I could build a legacy with my own hands, without the weight of my family's billions clearing the path. I wanted to be respected for my competence, not my inheritance. And that is why the budget crisis for this party was never about the cost of champagne or venue rental. It was a trap. I had noticed the discrepancies months ago. A consulting firm called Kestrel Finance Tactics had been billing us for strategy sessions that never happened. The invoices were buried in the event planning budget, approved by a junior manager who reported indirectly to Gavin's best friend. I realized then that my husband wasn't just stealing from our personal accounts. He was stealing from my company to fund his exit. I stood by the bar, watching Gavin check his phone. I signaled Marcus, the head of legal, and Julian, our CFO. Gentlemen, I said, keeping my voice low enough to be intimate but hard enough to be a command. I have reason to believe the vendor Kestrel Finance is in violation of our anti-corruption bylaws. I want all pending payments to them frozen immediately. Initiate a Level 1 audit on their contract. Julian looked surprised. Now, in the middle of the party, right now, I said. If that money leaves our accounts at midnight, we are complicit. Kill the transfer. Julian nodded and pulled out his phone to call the finance team. I watched Gavin across the room. He was laughing at a joke, his head thrown back, when his phone vibrated. He pulled it out, expecting, I assumed, a confirmation of a wire transfer. Instead, he saw a payment failure notification. The transformation was visceral. The color drained from his face, leaving it a sickly, ash gray. He tapped the screen frantically, his brow furrowing. He looked around the room, his eyes wide and wild, searching for searching for an answer. I walked over to him, sipping my sparkling water. Is everything all right? Gavin, I asked, tilting my head. You look like you have seen a ghost. He jumped, shoving the phone into his pocket. Yes, he stammered, sweat beading on his upper lip. Just a work issue. A deal I thought was closed seems to be having technical difficulties. Oh, that is annoying, I said, feigning sympathy. We are having some issues too. I just had to freeze a vendor payment. Apparently, some consulting firm was trying to overcharge us by $50,000. Can you believe the audacity? We will probably have the police involved by Monday. Gavin stopped breathing. For a second, I thought he might faint. He stared at me, trying to gauge if I knew, but I kept my face open, innocent, the picture of a corporate executive dealing with a mundane annoyance. The police, he choked out. Standard procedure for fraud, I said breezily. Anyway, don't let work ruin the night. I am sure your deal will sort itself out. I walked away before he could respond. He was trapped. If he argued, he revealed himself. If he stayed silent, he lost the money he needed to pay K.S. and leave me. A moment later, my phone vibrated. It was a message from K.S. She must have realized the payment was blocked and panicked, assuming Gavin was cutting her out. It was a photo of a handwritten agreement on a cocktail napkin, dated 3 months ago. Consulting fee split 50-50. G. Pierce. It was in Gavin's handwriting. He told me it was legal. K.S. texted, "I am not going to jail for him." I saved the image to the secure cloud. I had him. I had the bank fraud, the identity theft, and now the corporate embezzlement. I walked up to the valet stand. I didn't want to be here when the clock struck 12. The ballroom felt suffocating, filled with people who admired a man who was nothing but a thief in a tuxedo. "Mrs. Pierce," the valet asked, holding out my keys. "Leaving so soon?" "Yes," I said, taking the keys. "My husband will be staying late to clean up. I have a headache." I didn't wait for Gavin. I didn't say goodbye. I walked out into the crisp, cold December air. The Christmas lights wrapped around the hotel pillars twinkled merrily, a stark contrast to the demolition I had just initiated. I got into my car and set the GPS for home. I wasn't running away. I was going to the one place Gavin thought was his sanctuary. I would be waiting for him in the kitchen, in the dark, with the evidence laid out on the table like a feast. "Come home, Gavin," I whispered to the empty car as I pulled onto the highway. The party is over. The kitchen island was no longer a place for meals. It was an altar of evidence. I sat on a bar stool in the shadows, listening to the garage door rumble open. I had arranged the items with the precision of a museum curator. The black burner phone sat in the center. To its left, the scanned documents of Maddox Meridian LLC. To its right, the printed email chain where he discussed my breakdown. And leaning against a vase of dead roses, a single sheet of white cardstock on which I had written 3 words in thick, black marker, "Choose an explanation." Gavin walked in, shaking the rain from his coat. He looked exhausted, his tuxedo tie undone, his eyes hollow from the panic of the frozen transaction. He saw me first. Then he saw the table. He froze. The color drained from his face so fast it looked painful. "Bree," he choked out, his voice cracking. What is all this?" He reached for the burner phone, but I placed my hand over it. "Don't touch it," I said softly. He recoiled, and then the performance began. He dropped to his knees, grasping the edge of the granite counter. "Bree, baby, please," he stammered, tears instantly welling in his eyes. "I can explain. It is not what it looks like. That company, it was a surprise for you. I was trying to build something for our retirement. The woman, she is just a consultant. You have to believe me. I love you so much." I didn't blink. I didn't speak. I just watched him. When his tears didn't yield a reaction, the mask slipped. He stood up abruptly, his face twisting into a snarl of pure malice. He pulled out his own phone and held it up. The camera lens pointed directly at my face. "You are crazy," he shouted, his voice booming off the tiled walls. "Look at you, sitting in the dark, stalking me, stealing my property, say something. Brielle, scream at me like you did in the car. Let the world see how unstable you really are." He was trying to manufacture the evidence he needed for the conservatorship. He wanted me to break. Instead, I reached under the counter and tapped the screen of my tablet. I had already activated the home security system's internal cameras to record in high definition. I also placed my phone on the counter, the voice memo app running. Perfectly legal in North Carolina. I am perfectly calm. "Gavin," I said, my voice level and clear, "and I am afraid your performance is being recorded from 3 different angles." Before he could process that, the phone in my pocket rang. It was the bank's fraud verification line again. I pulled it out and put it on speaker. "Mrs. Pierce, this is the final verification call," the agent said. "We have a discrepancy with the notary location." Gavin panicked. He lunged toward the phone, shouting at the device. "There is no discrepancy," he yelled, his desperation making him sloppy. "I was there. I met the notary at the hotel with my wife this morning. We signed everything in person, just released the funds." The room went silent. The agent on the line paused. I looked at Gavin, my eyes locking onto his. "Wait," I said, ensuring the recording caught every syllable. "You just said you met the notary this morning here in Raleigh." "Yes," Gavin snapped, still focused on the money. "I was there at 10:30. But Gavin," I said, tilting my head, "you told me, and you told your partners, that you were in Atlanta all week closing a merger." "How could you be in a hotel room in Raleigh signing loan papers if you were 400 miles away?" Gavin's mouth opened, then snapped shut. He realized what he had done. He had just destroyed his own alibi on a recorded line with a federally insured bank. "Sir," the agent's voice was icy now, "I am flagging this application for immediate investigation. Do not attempt to access this account." The line went dead. Gavin stared at the phone, then at me. His hands were shaking, not from fear anymore, but from a dangerous, cornered rage. "You think you are so smart," he hissed, stepping closer. "You think this matters. I will destroy you, Brielle. I will tell everyone you are a paranoid schizophrenic. I have emails from you. Crazy, rambling emails sent to my work address begging forgiveness for your episodes. I will have Samantha, Mike, and the entire board testifying that you are unfit. You will lose your job. You will lose this house. You will be nothing." He was doubling down on the lie about the emails. I picked up my phone. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I opened the group chat with Samantha, Mike, and 3 other key social influencers in our circle. I attached a single image, the photo of the burner phone screen showing the text where he instructed Key S to fake the breakdown emails tonight. I typed one sentence. He thought I was asleep. I hit send. At the same moment, a message popped up from KS. He used a keylogger to get your password. He sent those emails from his laptop using a VPN. I have the IP logs. I looked at Gavin. He was still ranting, still listing the ways he would ruin me. He didn't know that my forensic team was already remotely imaging his laptop, or that his allies were currently staring at their phones, realizing they had been played. "I am filing for an emergency asset freeze," I said, sliding off the stool. "I have also notified the fraud department at Everpine. They are opening a vendor audit into Kestrel Finance tomorrow morning." Gavin laughed, a hollow, broken sound. "You can't prove anything." He spat. "It is your word against mine, and I have the best lawyer in the city waiting for me tomorrow." "Good," I said, walking past him toward the stairs. "You are going to need him." He thought the meeting with the lawyers was his safety net, his chance to spin the narrative one last time. He thought he could charm his way out of a legal room just like he charmed his way into my life. He didn't know that I wasn't just bringing a lawyer. I was bringing the truth about who really owned the company he had tried to steal from. I left him standing in the kitchen, surrounded by the debris of his own lies, convinced he still had a move left to play. I would let him keep that hope for exactly 12 more hours. The conference room at Tessa Langford's office was designed to intimidate, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gray Raleigh skyline and air conditioning set to a temperature that felt like a morgue. Gavin arrived 10 minutes late. He walked in flanked by a flashy attorney named Richard, wearing a suit that cost more than my first car. Gavin looked rested, his confidence restored by a night of what I assumed was aggressive coaching. He thought he was walking into a negotiation with a hysterical wife. He sat down, loosened his tie, and gave me a look of practiced pity. "Brielle," Gavin said, his voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. "I hope you are feeling better. Richard and I have prepared a settlement that ensures you get the medical help you need. We are willing to keep the unpleasantness." of your paranoia out of the public record. Richard slid a thick binder across the mahogany table. My client is very generous. Mrs. Pierce, Richard added, not bothering to look at me. Given your recent instability and the attempted sabotage of his business dealings, we are asking for full power of attorney over the marital assets until a psychiatrist clears you. I didn't touch the binder. I didn't look at Richard. I looked straight at the man I had shared a bed with for 7 years. Are you done? I asked quietly. Tessa didn't say a word. She simply opened her briefcase and began laying out the exhibits, one by one, like tarot cards predicting a hanging. First, the log of the remote notary session. Second, the high-resolution photo of the storage unit whiteboard detailing his exit plan. Third, the forensic report from the independent IT firm confirming the keylogger he installed on my laptop. And finally, the audio file of him screaming at me in the kitchen, admitting he was at the hotel when he claimed to be in Atlanta. Gavin's smile didn't fade, it just froze. Richard picked up the notary log, his eyebrows knitting together. This is circumstantial, Richard blustered, though his voice lacked conviction. My client has explanations for Gavin doesn't have explanations. I interrupted, my voice sharp. And he definitely doesn't have money. Gavin scoffed. I have plenty of capital. Brielle, unlike you, I don't rely on a salary. Actually, you do, I said, leaning forward. You rely on vendor kickbacks from a shell company called Kestrel Finance Tactics. You thought you were stealing from Everpine Systems. You thought you were draining the budget of a standard corporation. I paused, letting the silence stretch until it was physically uncomfortable. You didn't know that Everpine is a subsidiary of Sterling Global, I continued. And you didn't know that my mother is a Sterling. I am not just the vice president. Gavin, I am the majority shareholder of the parent company. I own Everpine. I own the vendor contracts. And as of last night, I personally blocked the unauthorized transfer to Kestrel Finance. Gavin's face turned a color I had never seen before, a translucent, sickly gray. He looked at Richard, panic flaring in his eyes. Is that true? Richard asked, pulling his hand away from the binder as if it were radioactive. The money is gone, Gavin, I said. The vendor account is frozen. The bank has flagged your mortgage application for fraud. And she sent me a notarized affidavit this morning claiming you coerced her into impersonating me. She is trading her testimony for immunity. Richard closed his laptop. The air in the room shifted instantly. This was no longer a divorce negotiation. It was a criminal defense crisis. We are done here, Richard muttered to Gavin. Standing up. Sit down, Tessa commanded. Her voice cracked like a whip. You are not leaving until we settle this. Unless you want Brielle to hand this entire file to the district attorney by lunch. I slid a single piece of paper across the table. This is a quitclaim deed for the house, I said. And this is a confession of financial infidelity and attempted fraud to be held in escrow. You will take on 100% of the debt you created. You will never contact me again. You will never speak my name in public. If you do, the escrow breaks and I press charges. I can't sign that, Gavin whispered. It will ruin me. You are already ruined, I replied. I am just giving you the choice between being ruined in private or being ruined in a federal prison cell. Gavin looked at Richard. His lawyer didn't argue. He didn't object. He just gave a slight, resigned nod. The system couldn't be gamed. The paper trail was absolute. Gavin picked up the pen. His hand was shaking so violently that the tip tapped a rhythm against the paper. He looked at me one last time, searching for the woman who used to fix his mistakes, the wife who used to clean up his messes. She wasn't there. He signed. The scratch of the pen against the paper was the loudest sound in the world. It was the sound of a trap snapping shut, but this time, the predator was the one inside. I didn't stay to watch him leave. I walked out of the office and into the bright winter sunlight. I drove home in silence. When I walked into my kitchen, I saw the spot on the counter where the burner phone had been. It was empty. I poured a glass of wine and turned off the overhead lights, leaving only the soft glow of the Christmas tree in the corner. For the first time in months, the house was quiet. I took a deep breath, and the air didn't taste like anxiety anymore. It tasted like freedom. I wasn't a victim. I wasn't a bitter ex-wife. I was a risk manager who had finally eliminated the biggest liability of her life. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from, so please drop a comment below and let's chat. If you enjoyed watching Justice Be Served, please subscribe to the Mia Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit that hype button so more people can hear this story. See you in the next one.